Hi, I'm Steve and welcome to another down-home clean carnivore video. By now, you've probably noticed something about this series. I started by telling you that I never intended to write a book, and that's true. Then I shared how chapters seemed to surprise me. Along the way, ordinary moments became stories, and ordinary stories became chapters. Today, I'd like to tell you perhaps the biggest surprise of all. This isn't really a carnivore book. Now, before my carnivore friends think I've lost my mind, let me explain. Yes, there's a lot of beef in the book. There's a lot of stories about chuck rolls, steaks, fasting, and losing more than 100 pounds. I talk about brain fog lifting, inflammation subsiding, and the freedom I found by changing the way I ate. Those experiences are real, and they're an important part of my journey. But they aren't the destination. They're merely the doorway. When I first sat down to organize the manuscript, I assumed I was writing about food and healing. Then I started reading through the chapters, and I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Again and again, the stories moved beyond the plate. They kept leading me towards something deeper. I wrote about filling a freezer with carefully packaged beef, only to discover that I was really writing about preparation and the peace that comes from knowing tomorrow has already been partially cared for. I wrote about simplifying my meals and realized I was also simplifying my thinking. I wrote about creating systems for my YouTube channel. And I found myself describing the same principles that had transformed my kitchen. Different settings, same lesson. The more I paid attention, the clearer it became. This book isn't about asking whether you should eat steak every day. It's asking a much larger question. What kind of life are you building? That's a question everyone can answer, regardless of what's on their plate. As the chapters accumulated, I realized they kept circling back to the same ideas. They spoke about living as a good steward of what God has entrusted to us, about discovering a quieter mind in a world that rewards constant noise, about creating enough margin that life no longer feels like one emergency after another, and about finding the freedom to serve other people instead of spending every waking hour managing ourselves. I never intended to write about those things. They simply kept appearing. One chapter would begin with a steak dinner and with gratitude, and another would begin with an unplugged laptop and end with adaptability. A sunrise became a meditation on peace, and a spontaneous road trip became a reminder that purpose travels with us. Even the little frustrations of everyday life began revealing truths that had nothing to do with food and everything to do with the way we live. That's when I finally understood why I enjoyed writing this book so much. I wasn't defending a diet. I was telling the story of a life that had been rearranged merely by changing what I ate, which changed when I ate. The carnivore lifestyle happened to be the first domino. And when it fell, other things began falling into place as well. My days became more ordered. My relationships grew richer because I was more present. My work became more focused because my mind was clear. My faith became more intentional because I finally had enough margin to slow down and to listen. Looking back, I can see that none of those changes were accidental. They were all connected. I think that's why this book resonates even with people who have no interest in becoming carnivore. Deep down, most people aren't looking for another eating plan. They're looking for hope. They're looking for clarity. They're looking for a life that feels less hurried, less complicated, and more meaningful. I understand that because that's exactly what I was looking for myself. If someone finishes this book and never eats another steak, I'll certainly be disappointed. But if they finish it with a renewed sense of purpose, a deeper appreciation for stewardship, a stronger relationship with the Lord, or the courage to begin making changes that they once believed were impossible, then I will consider the book a success. Because that has always been the greater story. The meat changed my body and cleared my thinking. The meat opened the door. He showed me what was waiting on the other side. In our final episode, I'd like to share why I'm writing this book at this season of my life and what hope remains long after I'm gone. Walk with me.